Okay, there's you.
Looks good.
And I'm going to add. Da, 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 da. So I assume this is the one they called from.
There we are.
There you are. Right where we left you.
Yes.
So, are you guys looking any
We
brighter?
went out for sushi.
It's
You
looking
went out.
good on. It's looking good on my end.
Everything
Yeah.
looks good here.
Okay, very good.
So go. I guess go ahead.
Okay, let's go. Let's hit.
All right.
Hey, okay. Welcome everybody. Julian, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing awesome.
Good, good, good.
Yeah.
We're having our very first interview, and I'm really excited about this. I have been, and this was when Julien and I started our show, the Flight of the Navigators. One of the things we wanted to branch off into was interviewing people who one are doing kind of the work. They may be blogging, they may be doing videos, they may be just talking about it, whatever. You know, people that are doing that kind of work, especially out in front in the public during this transition. And we also realize that there are people that are just living it. And can we stop because my food's here?
Perfect timing.
He'll have those opening lines down for the final cut.
So it is for his daughter, right? We won't see him back like chewing.
I believe
I
it.
know, yeah.
Just give me a minute, guys.
Wasabi stuck to his tooth.
So how's Seattle? How is it out there?
I'm not in Seattle proper. I am in the hills, in the mountains outside of Seattle.
Nice.
So
Nice.
I'm close to where everybody drives through when they want to go skiing. So they go right by me. So my children live in Seattle, or my two children from my other relationship live in Seattle, and I see them on the weekends. But it's warm. It's been sunny, warm, virtually no rain. Mid 70s, I would say, on average. So we're having our summer in full blown nature, and we had our summer very early. Spring came very early, actually. So everybody was surprised. Everyone's gardening was like, "Oh, we gotta hurry up! Things are blooming and stuff. We can get all set up." So everybody was a whirlwind. Within a matter of like a month, I think the average degree changed something like 25 degrees within a month. It was just a phenomenal shift. Yeah.
Wow. And it stayed that way?
Yeah, it stayed. I mean, we went down maybe a week. We only had 1 week in the upper 50s, lower 60s, but then it was like, that's it. Summer's summer. So.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah, it's nice. Some people think it's rainy here. I'm like, just keep telling that. We don't deal with the population.
Exactly.
Talk amongst yourselves. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Is that seaweed on your teeth?
No, my kid's happy with her raw fish. So.
Excellent. Our goddaughter.
Oh, that matters. Yes. So should we just start all over again?
Sure.
Whatever you like.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Julien, how are you doing?
I'm doing awesome.
Great. Welcome to our first interview. This is exciting. When Julien and I first really talked about doing our show, The Flight of the Navigators, we also wanted to talk. We talked about wanting to bring in, guests, bring in interviews, and when we were trying to keep our time slot to about an hour for the show, which we've blown past that the last 10 shows or so, we knew that would be tough. So we got the idea of just doing special interview shows, and this is our very first one, and I'm very excited about it because we're interviewing two very dear friends of mine, Don and Jacque Nelson. Welcome.
Thank you.
Guys, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Oh yeah, this is awesome. Don and Jacque have been involved in very similar work to what Julien does. The Jacque channels a group of nine, and correct me if I get any of this wrong, but 9 non-physical beings that collectively call themselves Mary. And through that, you've done everything from workshops to vacations to private sessions and books. You've written 2 books and all that. And so we want to talk about that work, and we also want to talk about how this has changed your life and how you're moving with your lives since this has been going on. And then at the end, we're going to get to have time with Mary also, which is very, very exciting.
Great.
Yes. So first of all, welcome again.
Thank you.
How did this channeling come about for you? Was this something that you worked on? You studied anything about it, or how was it?
Well, I'll start the story and then I'll let Jacque finish it. So about 6 months before Mary came through to us, I had been reading a lot of Jerry and Esther Hicks and Abraham material, and was reading their first book. And this was shortly after I got a box of their cassette tapes from a friend of mine who had been following them since the very beginning. So these were all like early 90s. And when we got this box of tapes, Jacque and I both were just listening to them. We'd listen to each one like 3 times. So we figured that's how many times we had to listen to it to take it in, you know. And so then we bought their book, and I read the book, and in the book they had an exercise where you meditate for, I don't know how much time each day, but for about a month, and then to tap into your own spirit guides. And so I, being the more diligent one, took that challenge up, and I did it for, I think I did it for 31 or 32 days, because back then I had to do it a little extra just to make sure that it stuck, you know. And and after about 30 days, and then it was maybe a week or 2 after that Mary came through Jacque.
You're like,
whoops.
So I had, in that time, I had gone and gotten a reading by a friend of ours. His name is Robert DeVille, and we had the inventory for a metaphysical bookstore, and we had it in our front, basically our formal living room at the time, and we were wondering whether we should make it a storefront or just sell the stuff off. So I had a reading, and in the reading, he told me for Jacque and I to sit down together for 5 minutes every day and meditate and connect to Rockford's guides. We live just outside of Rockford, Illinois. So to tap into Rockford's guides. And at that time, and this was years and years ago, I didn't even like the idea that a city had guides.
Exactly.
right, yeah.
You know, but I'm like, I paid this guy money, so I'll do what he says. You know? So we did, and it was actually the first day that we were laying in bed, or propped up in bed, and doing our first 5-minute interview, and I'm sitting there meditating, sorry. And I'm sitting there being very quiet, and being very meditative, and Jacque almost immediately starts like moving her body and her arms. And Jacque doesn't sit still very long anyway. So, I'm kind of thinking to myself, he can't even sit still long enough to meditate. This is important. As it was, Mary was introducing themselves, and you can take it away from there.
That's cool.
So yeah, it was the third time we sat down that they came all
that
the way
they
through.
that they came, yeah.
Okay,
and
that they came through.
Do you
So
remember
what was
the year or the date or? Yeah.
Sure, it's actually March of 2000, so we've just hit
Wow.
16 years spending time
Yep.
with them.
Wow.
And so how was that for you the first time that they came through?
It's interesting. People ask me that, and like, were you freaked out because like all of a sudden, your body's popping around and something's speaking through you, and
Right.
and I said, the oddest thing, or maybe the least odd thing about it, I suppose, is not at all. And it's the last thing I anticipated having be a part of my life. And yet it just seemed so absolutely natural. And of course, and it was great. The interesting thing in it all is, Don is the one who did the work. He's been meditating since he was, 11 or 12?
Yeah.
I truly, 5 minutes. So Robert DeVille was brilliant to say 5 minutes because, I would sit still for that long.
Well, for 2 minutes.
Well, the other part wasn't me, though. So they came all the way through, and they were in, they were moving around the room with my body, and they were like really, really like engaged with, it was spring, and the window was open, and the smell of spring, and like I think even maybe fresh cut lawn was coming through the window. Yep. And they just would saturate in these moments of connectivity to physical, and it was really, they just, I don't even remember what we asked them about, or
I talked to them for about an hour and a half.
The first time for an hour and a half?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
so it worked really well right off the bat.
I was loaded with questions and comments. I don't know if they're coming back, so I'm going to ask as much as I can.
Good.
But so and it took them a while to assimilate to Jackie's body as well. So that was part of the hour and a half too.
Right. So just kind of figuring out how to do it.
First time at the gym sort of thing.
Yeah. It's almost like a walk-in, and how do I use this physical body?
Right.
And at one point, because they moved around the room quite a bit, and you started on the bed, and then at one point they kind of almost rolled off the bed onto the floor.
And you mean Jackie rolled off the bed?
Yeah.
Okay.
And at one point they were on the floor next to me, and I just reached my hand down, and when they grabbed my hand and held my hand, Jackie's body, I don't know, you could probably explain it better than I can.
It was this extraordinarily amazing sobbing that started coming forth, and it was just like the absolute pure beauty of human touch is what they were so taken by, is the remembering. Yeah. Some of them have had physical experiences and some of them have not, and so those that had, just taking that moment to so completely saturate in the human touch. The first time they came through, we only knew it was one. And so it's been over time that, we've recognized and realized there's more of them than one, that it's a gathering of spirits. And when you said it all came right away, like really easy right away, that was because, caught me off guard. So after that, then of course, my personality got into it and some of my resistances. So then it would take a while. We'd sit down. When they went to leave that day, Don said, "Hey, will you be back?" And they said, "Anytime you ask." And then he said, "What can we call you?" And actually Mary, and it's Mary. It's funny sometimes when people hear Mary, they think Merry.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I see.
And the Mary prankster.
And
same vibration.
Yes, and one of them said, the one that was there, or the one we were aware of, said, "I had a lifetime. My name was Mary. You can call me Mary." So that's really where Mary came from.
Okay.
And then we've met the rest of them since then, and of course countless other, visits with lots of different entities and spirits, and whatever anybody needs when they're moving with them will come through or be accessed. So, but even in that, the big thing that Mary talks about is that when somebody asks them a question or when exploration's going on, they look inside of us, and then their whole work is they look inside of us for those answers, because they're not out in a big bag in the sky somewhere. They'll say it's like they're right there inside of you, and so they'll talk to you about what they see in there, and then they teach each person they move with to know how to access that for themselves, because we all have this beautiful access to such breadth and depth of interaction and relationship with ourself and with spirit. So they really came to teach us to be the bigger sense of who we are.
I absolutely agree with everything in terms of your interpretation there. I have my own similar observations of near channeling, we would call it, Don. Some of
Right.
it may be
I
channeling.
mean, there are times that you do channel,
Yeah.
but not
But
often.
for the longest time, I would basically say I'm not going to channel, because I had this observation that like people who channel were like in another place and people wouldn't trust them. So I said, look, just take it, whatever I'm saying, just assume it's me. Like I'm taking responsibility for whatever's coming through. And so I would really try to follow it with my mind, even though admittedly I would lose track of where it was. And I just like, I'm just talking. I'm just saying things. I don't know what I'm saying. I would have to get reminded about where we were and, things were going. But this is a really important interview for me and in discussion on channeling to begin with, because it is in everyone's nature to find those connections. So I'm really glad you zeroed in on that attribute of the experience, because when I started, it was really about, hey, I'm having some great experiences, I'm getting some great insight, and everyone was agreeing with me. That really helped. The people were agreeing that my insight was useful. So I was like, well, I might as well keep doing this. And it kind of like flourished in that way where it was like, I am just exploring potentials here, and I'm just, speaking out loud, and I'm sharing them. I've had a lot of one-on-one conversations that were profound that never got recorded, never got shared, and they were wonderful. But there's another level when you're sharing with, more than just a single partner. I do know that a single partner being present can make those sort of like channeled sources or whatever it is, those that you're speaking with, if they can touch, it's like it grounds them and says, this is really going to be worth it, because I really feel like I am a part of this, level of reality, the consciousness and whatnot. And so I found that really expanded once I had somebody in my life that, that actually cared about, these sorts of abilities or thoughts that I had. Right. Because my my ex relationship, it would have nothing to do with it. It wasn't that she didn't believe in it. It's just that she's like, this is not a part of regular life. This is not functional for anybody as far as they could tell. But she grew up in meditation. She grew up understanding spiritual. That was just outside the boundaries of what we had set our relationship to expect. So when I moved into another relationship, it did get to expand, and of course my life grew very beautiful as a result of all the explorations of the thoughts. I'd like to for a moment sort of like credit a lot of those times with the engagement that I had with somebody else, because if it wasn't, and if it didn't have a value seen in my exterior world, like seen in my observations, I feel like I probably would have just called myself some sort of nut over time, just secluded myself or something.
It's funny because Jackie at one point said, what if this is just a mental illness? And I said, well, it's a really good one.
It's a really good one, no doubt. Yeah.
It's not a bad one, so let's just go see what
happens. Like, start a psychology study on good illnesses.
Yes. It's a really super great informative one. So I was just saying that, being partnered in the work is really powerful. And if it wasn't for Don, it's, I knew that there was I had to make a choice, that I could either just let it go and not have it be a part of my life, or really embrace it. And there is, it is an interesting thing. Somebody asks you, what do you do? It's one of those questions when you meet somebody new, and we've had all kinds of experiences with that answer,
Yeah, sure.
And yet I can't imagine doing anything else. It's opened our world to incredible people, to incredible experiences, to an incredible way of creating our life. Our children were young, very young when this started. And we're watching them create their lives now. And we always have this fun story about when our daughter was like 18, and she never really wanted to talk with the Marys, teenagers or kids. They don't want, they don't want you knowing that much about them all the time. And we really respected that. And so at about 18, all of a sudden she started like talking to Don and I and like spewing out all these teachings, all these ways that Mary teaches about creating your life and really stepping into who you are and using your magic and connecting and all of these things. And we're looking at her, we're going, you listen to Mary? Like, when do you do that? Well, we had a group that met here at our house every Tuesday night for like 5 years. And she said, every Tuesday night for 5 years on the other side of my bedroom wall. So she had actually listened. And it's she is absolutely a manifestor and creator and so connected to her own being and solid in that. And our son also, just really the way that they move and create their lives is, just such a great knowing that we gave that to them, even if it wasn't because they were talking to Mary, it's because they were growing up in us, living the teachings, and just living this expanded life that knows that there's just this extraordinary connection into everything. So
Indeed.
It's been great.
And what you were saying, Julien, about sharing it with a partner, when they first came through, Jacque and I were the only ones that really knew about it. I don't think we told our first friend. Well, it was probably early on, but maybe a few weeks, and within a very short time, Jacque and I and 2 or 3 other people started meeting once a week and talking to Mary. And so that kind of gave Jacque that practice proving ground, if you will, to really develop and get used to and assimilate the energies, and for the Marys to start coming through, more than just the one and that kind of thing. And we did that it was probably a year and a half before we really went public with it.
Right.
So,
because I remember at the beginning when I first met you, Jacque, you weren't even opening your eyes while you were channeling or moving around.
Right. And that's a great story too, because I would sit in a chair in front of a room full of people and bring the Marys through, and my eyes would be closed. And over time people would start saying, can you open your eyes? Can you open your eyes? And I would be like, no, I can't open my eyes. They burn really bad when I try to open my eyes. They burn so bad. And so people are like, well, try. Can you try? I'd try. They burn. And then Mary was going through, they brought us so many different teachings, and one of them was no excuses, no defenses, no justification, and no blaming. And it's this teaching about really living your life, releasing those practices.
I brought it down to J-bed.
So you can remember. And so they were in the middle of it, and they said, for instance, no excuses. They said, Jacque, open your eyes. And I opened my eyes, and there was no burning, there was no problem. It was perfectly fine. It was wonderful. And people were like, wow, because the energy of my eyes opening, and I'm really feeling, a lot of people talk about how my eyes are very different when the Marys are in, and that ended up being why Michelle didn't like to have the Marys come through with me, because she could feel me leave, and it was very uncomfortable for her to feel her mom vanish. So, but once my eyes started opening, she felt more comfortable. But it's that stories we tell ourselves, the way we inform ourselves about what's true and what's not true, and we believe it. So when I was telling myself it was too scary or burned, and when I let go of the excuses, it just accelerated the work. My eyes were open. Oh, yeah. Mary is like such an entertainer, and they love to move around the room, and it's so great to have them, be able to really like look in people's eyes and move with them, and it's powerful. So they allowed that. They were so honoring, though, of my path and needing to find the timing that it was time. So they're bringing through this teaching, and bam, there it is. So
yeah. That's awesome. So what is your experience like when you are channeling?
It's interesting. And when Julien was talking about his experience, I like him. I find myself so grateful that I just get to release and let the Marys come through and have that pure channel connection. And people will ask me, well, where are you? And do you have any recall? And I will have recall of a conversation because I'm like observing it, but I'm not observing it as myself, as my personality. And so I'm like, I think it's kind of odd to say, but I think I'm where I'll be when I'm dead, just in this pure, amazing, extraordinary space, and no like personal referencing or any of those sorts of things that we do naturally as humans when we're talking with people. And I'm just listening and observing, and of course taking notes for myself sometimes because it's all really great information. And mental whatever, just it's kind of a funny thing there, but and then when I come back, I don't carry it. That's part of my thing. Is my agreement with them is that none of it has any adverse effect on me, and Mary moves with people with some extremely, extremely intimate and difficult or challenging or different places they are in their lives. And I always say it's such a gift. I get to meet the people in the middle of their soul through observing their conversation with the Marys, and while they're meeting themselves in the middle of their soul and really learning who they are and what they are. And I don't want to carry all those stories with me. I mean, they're beautiful and there's lots of things that go on. And so I don't carry it. I don't remember. The Marys do. They can talk with somebody years after they've had a conversation with them, and they'll bring something up. So because it's a real, pure, and so incredible connection, and the energy. Yeah. It's beautiful. So, but that's I kind of I'm just kind of in my unembodied experience. And the Marys, I'm going to say, they always say being human is not a takeaway. It's not a less than. It's a more. It's an add to have a body and get to have the human experience. So it's really incredible that we all get to be here discovering together and really truly, in reference again to the partnership. If it hadn't been for Don, chances are I might have walked away from it, and he was just been just this great, pusher, like really just lean in, just do it, just try it, just let's see where it goes. And truly, he's like the shoemaker's kids. He never gets a session. He's like, can I please talk to Mary? It's I
have to get in the book.
Yes, I think my partner and wife Crystal probably really enjoyed the whole journey. I mean, she's let me know that she has, and she's been really sort of like, that person that's brought out the context a little bit more. Like I could say something philosophically, but without a living experience, it feels like, did that really hit home? And like, yes, it's really hit home. And she has her, her take on the information and her, her experience, and that always continues to round it out. So it's really, it really helped in the grounding sense. Now that being said, I think there's a lot of people who are probably very interested in channeling and learning how to get into that. Would you have any sort of advice on where people might look into maybe some sort of, source that someone might begin, researching maybe, or if you know anybody that might teach or anything like that? I don't know. Or what would you give to somebody who's like, hey man, I think I would like to see how to do that.
Have them read Abraham's first book.
Okay.
and then have a spouse who will do it.
And have a spouse that'll do it.
Have a committed partner.
It's interesting because we've had people ask if we could teach, or if Mary could teach them how to connect in, and it's I have no idea how it happened, other than I allowed my innocence to be there. I was in complete agreement to have an experience that I didn't even know what was coming, and I've always known that, I've just always known that we're connected to spirit, and there's a story Mary's offered to me about what my connection with them is, and that sort of thing, and yet so I think that whatever they feel pulled to, because we really have to learn how to come into our own beings, and what takes somebody to that opening isn't going to be the same as what takes somebody else to that opening. So one of the things that, early on, we had a young man ask Mary, Mary, who's my guru? And who do I need to follow? Who's going to take me there? And Mary just grinned really big and said, well, you're your guru. It's come into the guru in you and begin to really open that relationship with yourself. And from there, you'll guide you and you'll know. So I would say to kind of, tune into your internal pendulum and say, is this for me? Does this feel like a direction? And not in your mind. Your mind is great. It's wonderful. And yet into your whole being and say, do I feel compelled from the inside out? Not from what somebody else is saying or suggesting, but do I feel compelled from my own being to follow that or to seek that out? So there's a lot of,
the other thing that I would say is Jacque has a really amazing ability to let go, far more than I do. And
okay.
And I believe that that's a big reason of why they come through her, because she is able to do that. But also, I think that she wasn't necessarily attached to how a connection might happen. And so a lot of people, I feel, will see Jacque channel Mary and they say, I want to channel. And so they have a vision of what it will look like because they've seen Jacque do it. And they get too zeroed in on that instead of just really being open. Because I think that tapping into an artistic ability can be a way for somebody to really channel or tap into that kind of energy. They may not speak for spirit, but through their art, they might. So so I think that tapping in can come in an infinite amount of ways, and really to just let go of what that preconceived notion you might have of how it's going to happen and allow it,
And therein lies the conundrum of studying channeling, because you will probably associate it in only one fashion.
And I think my feeling on it is that it's probably an innate ability that we have anyways. We have just created so many barriers to allowing that kind of connection. And then so when you get into the talk of who can I learn this from, or how can I be taught this, you're just giving more power to those barriers.
Well, and again, it is. It's like Don said, just open to where do you feel that soul connection, and because we all stream and feel things in different ways. So if you take that parameter off and stop seeking, and you just open to your connection, I mean, there's people who, find it in a walk in nature, or in
or I would say, like, one of the greatest things that's happened to me, and I give so much credit to the work that I've done with Mary, is about 3 years ago I started wood carving, and I opened into it. I believe that it was probably there all the time. I kind of knew that there was some kind of artistic ability, but I hadn't given myself the time or the space to just release and explore what it might be. And there's times when I'm carving when I will move into a state of complete bliss. And it doesn't get much better.
And that's even before your product is finished, or whatever you're finished.
Absolutely.
Just in the middle of it.
It's in the process of it, and
So sometimes I look over and I see him in that state, and I'm surprised I can actually see him, because he is so in the ethers with what he's doing. It's so blended with it that sometimes it's surprising to me that he's not invisible, that he's not, offloading somewhere. So I think maybe there's just this form sitting there so I don't freak out. And he's vanishing. Oh, Don must be carving. I can't see him.
There's just a light ball over there at night.
Well, and Jacque, you've done some movement into the artistic realm too, haven't you?
I did. It's fun. We both knew that we really wanted to start opening our passions in other directions too. And mine came out in actually designing women's clothing, which it matches me perfectly as far as what I call it is edgeless designs, because I don't finish any edges and I leave it all open for But what's really remarkable about that too is what I've discovered is anytime I try to, practice control or practice my predetermined idea of what something's going to be, I can't create anything. And if instead I just stand and I let the fabric and myself start to communicate, and I'm moving with it to help it become what it wants to be and what it desires, and then it's amazing, and these beautiful pieces come out, and I've had women just so they feel like I've painted the inside of them into something they can wear on the outside through fabric. And that's channeling as far, also just another form of it is being able to bring something inside, into expression. And so there's so many ways that people can move with channeling. So I guess my suggestion would be tap into your passion and see where it takes you instead of having a predetermined idea of what it is, and then that might lead you to something else and something else. Indeed. And something else. So keep opening.
Indeed. So,
Awesome.
if I could ask one more question, during that time, were you two in a particular focus of passion on something in particular, like at the onset?
We were actually at the onset of Mary coming through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were actually looking for what our passion would be, and we
I see.
Yeah, and they went, here we are.
Weird.
We were both working, regular jobs, and knew that we wanted to do something different, probably work for ourselves. And at the time, we
thought as big as.
We were thinking like running a campground or a bed and breakfast or something like that.
Okay.
Not really this at all.
So this was a little bit of an expansion on that idea.
Go bigger or go home or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and we neither one of us would ever turn back. It's amazing, and our lives are just extraordinarily touched and brought out by it. So it's
great. Yeah, it's awesome. Maybe this is a good time to bring Mary through.
Sure. Awesome. Love to
visit Mary.
Okay. Hey, just so you know, they look and sound a lot like me.
The odds are likely.
But you recognize them by their laugh, though.
You do have a brand of humor, that's for sure.
Yes. Hello, Mary.
Welcome.
Welcome to you, Mary.
We come in wiggling today.
Awesome.
Hello. We just invite each and every being to inhale. Oh, the breath. Let it in and then let it just fall out of all your pores. And again, let the rise of that breath move through your being and expand you. Wonderful. Thank you. It is in that breath, in each conscious breath that is moved through the being, that all possibility exists. So we thank you very much. Thank you. We are invited here. To see our old friend. Yes.
Yes, Mary.
Meet a new friend. Yes. Very good. Welcome. What will we talk about?
Well, it was interesting you brought up the breath to start with, because in our show the other night, Julien was talking about the breath, and I was talking a little bit about how you've worked with me and others about the concept of the first breath.
Yes.
And so I know you've worked with me for years, and I'm still just getting it. But I was hoping that maybe you could give a little introduction to it so that people can start maybe grasping a good idea of what you mean by that.
Indeed. So we will give you a little bit of a story, perhaps, to assist you with that. We know that the work you're very interested in this time is the shift. Yes, is that everything in this time, we are calling this year in your calendar the year of the whoosh. Yes, so time of great change, that every particle of existence is going through its absolute metamorphosis, and that is because you truly are in that movement from living in what we are referring to as an age of separation and into the movement of union, which is the original state of existence. And so we were having many conversations with friends who have come to invite us into their experience, into their life. And we noticed very often that when a challenge occurs, and then even sometimes when a great euphoria or a great joy occurs in the human experience, you stop breathing. And we found that very peculiar, because the breath, the physical and the ethereal breath, are such extraordinary treasures in the human experience. And so we began, of course, to get very curious, and we were looking to see, why do you hold your breath? Why do you stop breathing your breath when you most need your breath? And so then we started looking at how often that occurs. And we started looking, when does that begin to occur in the human experience? And what we recognize is it goes all the way back to very first breath that each human and each incarnation breathes. And so first breath is also your own breath. So what we see is that when your being comes forth into the world, and it just has an embodiment of this physical, by the way, we could speak about that for a very long time, the treasure of the physical body. And that very first breath is completely connected. And in the euphoria of your totality and infinity of existence, and into absolutely all creation. And you inhale that breath, excited to come into your world and be the contribution that you will be, the yes that you responded with. And you exhale. And then the next breath that is drawn begins to breathe in instead of your own breath. And that knowing, it begins to breathe in the environment that it is coming into. And the environment that is coming into has been in a practice of separation for a very, very long time. And so if we gave you the whole story, we might be here for a while. So we give you a bit of it, is that it is quite a contrast to come from the truth of what you are in your own breath into kind of a halting or confined environment of separation, and immediately move then into an attempt to establish your existence, to get to stay. Yes, this does not mean that you are not coming into a world of loving arms and loving beings and hearts that wish to nourish and nurture you. And by the way, yes, in answer to any questions that might arise, absolutely every human being does get that very first breath, even if they come in with breath issues. Yes, do you understand? That really is the purity of your own breath. And then you move through this process of attempting to acclimate yourselves into a world that is practicing separation when you are a union being. And actually everybody that's carrying the separation energy came in the same way. They are just forgetting, yes? And so it is now that we are really bringing forth this remembering of first breath. And so each being that remembers to open and breathe their own breath, that truth of that first breath, and to begin to let that be what oxygenates them again, that sends out as a ripple into every particle of existence, and becomes a possibility or an awakening within all humans, the remembering that you have your own breath, and that life isn't about adopting and replicating what is the practice of separation, and instead is about breathing that true breath of your own and remembering the infinity and the extraordinary nature of your own existence, and breathing that side by side with the encouragement of others to breathe their own breath, so that you may all actually rise one another up instead of being in competition or comparison. And to have no fear of being who you are, which will wipe out the practice of apologizing for self, which comes from an aspect of the humans, which, by the way, is the one aspect that is not from original, is not from creator, which is shame. And we recently had a conversation with somebody who was recognizing a teaching that they had run across that delineated that the difference between shame and guilt is that shame is feeling bad about who you are, and guilt is feeling bad about something you've done. Yes? And so that first apology for self actually comes in that second or third breath, when you're bringing your full self, and the energy of the world is saying, oh, you can't bring that here. We're not ready for it. And so oh, I'm so sorry. I did not mean to bring anything that would upset anything. Yes? Except for now, because there are those who are breathing their own breath, and that first breath is opening and it's spreading. There are many more children coming into your world that continue to breathe their own breath. Yes? And continue to breathe their own breath. And then there are more, it's catching and it's catching. And so you will find that much, 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 much more diversity and expression of existence is coming through. Every one of you who is in your world right now is there to be a part of this process of moving from this long practiced era of separation into opening into union, not going back to union, because it is never about going back. That has been already, yes? And instead opening into union, which now is actually complemented by the experiences of what has come in the energy of separation, and yet opening back into the full, continuous, alive and connected and unsegregated self, and amongst others. One of the things that we like to let people know is you do not see. So nature has always remained union. It has never said, okay, we'll cooperate with separation. Yes, it remains union. And we heard this one talking about art and its movement and channeling. Your arts in your world is a way that also union has leaked and kept leaking into the midst of separation, that every form of artistic expression actually is that connectiveness of union. And so we always say, look to nature, which is everywhere. Yes, even if it is underneath cement, it is there. Yes, that if you want to remember the union in your being. And so we say a blade of grass does not grow over somewhere and then come up to the field and say, can I please come in? Can I have permission to participate in the field? No, it grows right there wherever it pleases. Yes, right in the midst of the field as its own existence of exuberation. It's just fun that when some of you may decide to kind of open your nature ears, yes, or tune your senses in, there is so much ta-da going on all the time. Yes, nature is very excited about itself. And so that blade of grass will grow and it will emanate its wave of what it is, without any threat, without any against energy, without any combat or conflict, with its union, its arrival, and its full knowing, and be amongst all the other energies. And so those grass blades can be side by side by side by side, being what they are and interacting and emitting their contribution to the whole. And humans are also the same way, that it isn't about how do we stop the differences. It is about let's open to and really, really learn and grow and be the differences within ourselves and be the differences among each other and see what that brings to us as a whole. Yes, that is what we are here to remind you to do, because every moment you're interacting with something, yes, whether it is another human or your toenails or a particle of air, yes, and it's all relationship, and in every exchange there is infinite possibility of discovery and becoming more and connecting with more and more. So that itself, we brought then you do not come forth with that shame or that apology for self. You may still sometimes do something in your world that you might want to make an apology for, yes, out of honoring and care, and yet never, ever, ever for the self. And instead, to know that there is no ever for anybody, and never to ask anybody else to apologize for who they are and the truth of their being. And instead to be curious and to invite, and to know that there may be some that you feel an affinity for and that you feel great value in what they are and what they're bringing. Everything is of equal value. You as beings, individual creators, get to really sniff it all out a bit and play with your senses and learn what really compels or impassions or inspires you, and assists and complements you in becoming who you are. And that which doesn't isn't right or wrong. It isn't about judgment or duality. It is, oh, look at all the differences, and we all get to choose. We all get to interact together. And there's not one exchange that you cannot gain something from in the growing and knowing of yourself and one another.
So, Julien, there's your first your first experience with Mary.
That's beautiful. It really feels very comforting, and the approach is very warming, as it really guides our inner sensation, our higher self, our love, through the conversation, through the thoughts. It's very well, the flow is just works so well. You feel like you're just sort of like bubbling down a stream, exploring and realizing how it all connects and how it all, fits in. I did have one thing that came up with regards to the holding the breath. Like, why do we hold the breath?
Yes.
Like, what is the impetus in the holding the breath? And my sensation, you can maybe share on this. My sensation for the reason of holding the breath is this element where you feel like you may not make a choice because you're unprepared, or you're not deserving, or you're not quite feeling the comfortable in the stepping forward space. And I believe that's probably a realization over this idea that there's plenty of resistance and that the wrong decisions can be made, and yet that's not quite true.
Indeed, and yet what we offer is that holding the breath is always what we would say it comes out of some sort of practice with false fear, yes, which is what we refer to as a dysfunctional relationship with one of your aspects, yes, because they're all there other than shame, which you don't need to keep, by the way, because it isn't of your original being. All of your aspects are there to serve and to be with you and to help you become everything you wish to be. And yet, if you have a confused relationship with one of them that has fearfulness in it, yes, then you may hold your breath. And what we are bringing in that is, well, we see absolutely that there's that tendency to pull back and hold that breath before making the choice. We would say, what about a breathful choice, though? Let me breathe into this and actually breathe my being and breathe with what I'm moving with. And then I can make a clear choice. But if you're holding your breath, where are you in the mix? Yes. And then where does a decision that actually feeds your thriving or feeds the thriving of the continuous and your world, where does that come from? We so often see that when humans are feeling bad about something or they are challenged, that they will pull out of all the things that feed them. And we say, oh, lean into you, get back in, play with the things that actually, would you like to know? We know we are babbling a little bit, but would you like to know a bit to what that's about? Maybe have an expanded story?
Yes. I was specifically interested in, I have a baby child, and when she gets very crying and she's been very upset, she has a very stuttery breathing, like
yes.
And I'm interested to see, like, is she living in a resistant state or something? Like, what is the natural reason or cause behind that?
It is interesting. What we are seeing in her in that moment is there's kind of an overwhelm of so many things pumping through at the same time, and she's trying to kind of catch up with herself a little bit, yes, and trying to find that stream of breath, yes, and so it is that, and you will see humans do that too, yes, and or adult humans, and yet it is so in that there's so much. In that state, it is so exciting, these small infant beings, yes, as they are growing into touching everything that they are becoming and interacting with life. And so we would say in that it's just this finding her place. It is kind of the same place where a small child can be laughing really hard and then suddenly start crying, yes, because the exaggeration of experience is in the same peak, yes, of connectivity, and they just get a little confused. And so we would say that is actually her kind of moving to get the pieces all put into an arrangement that she can kind of stabilize, yes?
I see. Great. I love that explanation. Yes.
Wonderful.
So Julien, are you getting any pushings from anybody that wants to join into this?
Well, very specifically, I'm hesitating. I'm in my own holding my breath hesitation because the last time that the Pleiadians that I let come in through my consciousness have spoken with somebody who can really pinpoint in conversation concepts, thoughts, and feelings and emotions. They were very overwhelming in my body. Like it was very a large surge. I felt I was drinking from the fire hydrant, that sort of thing. So just by saying this, they're like, we'll be nice, we'll be soft as much as we can. But they do have just a few questions. I know that we are coming close to the time that we had arranged. Are we okay to play with that time a little over?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll just take a moment. There is.
It's only time.
Okay. There's an individual who was, we would call once a warrior, as in took on the mantle of doing battle for the sake of others. And he notices that a great deal of humanity's resistance is in this role of protecting one another. And although he has sort of moved beyond that experience himself, and he is a being of peace and promotes peace, he is very interested on what you would say for those who have taken up the mantle of approaching resistance for the sake of protecting another individual, and how we might release or step forward from that point.
Yes, and that is, we are very happy to move with that. It is one of the things we have been speaking about, because in separation, there's a support of that battle, and we recognize clearly the importance of how that has been moved with. And yet, what we would offer is the difference between rising up and rising against. And we are truly offering this awareness of the difference, because and let us open that up a little bit. We've noticed in your world, and it is why people pick up that mantle of fighting the battle for others. Mm-hmm. And there is a great deal of what we are referring to as bully energy. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And that comes in so many different formats, and yet it's always an insertion of or an attempt to insert something into somebody else's experience, or to belittle or lessen somebody. And what we've noticed so clearly is that one of the things that occurs when somebody becomes available for bully energy, yes, or societies or systems or whatever, yes, to understand, or even the system itself can be bully energy, is that whatever it's moving toward loses its ability to distinguish itself from what's coming at it. So we will go to this scenario because it is one that is easily known and recognized in your world. Okay. There's a lot of talk about it, of bully in maybe a school situation. Yes. Mm-hmm. So if somebody is bringing forth their aggression, which is false fear activating, and they're really in the midst of fear. And so, of course, our first thing is to love that being, love them, because that is really what they're craving and what will actually shift anything. And yet it is, so they're attempting to plow through and bully. A child or adult who rises up within themselves is so clearly that it opens their being into recognizing what is happening, and they're not susceptible to losing their ability to distinguish themselves from what is being thrown at them. Yes. The child or adult who pushes against, now that can happen in different ways. They can push against the bully energy that's coming at them, or push against themselves and collapse. Yes, do you understand? Will not be able to distinguish themselves. So in answer to that, instead of putting on the mantle of taking up battle, it is, let's put down the battle. Let's put down all the battle and rise in the truth of who you actually are, and let that emanate, and invite, not through bully energy, not through coercion or requirement, and instead inspire others to breathe their own breath, to know that they can stand up too, put down the battle, stand up too. And that is where, when you on your own or when you together with others, breathe up that rising up energy, and that light hits the back of your eyes. And that expansivity of well-being, which lives about right here between your heart and your expression center, that knowing of your well-being is there. Then that is really when you look into another and you remind them that they have that is extraordinary. They may choose to believe it or move with it or not. Yes, do you understand? And yet you offer the invitation. So that would be our movement, is that it's about people standing up and remembering. One among us was a giant on your earth, yes, and the giants left your earth in the practice of the experience in your world. When humans moved so far into separation that they forgot, and then the energy was not there for the giants to find themselves sustainable or desiring to be there, and so. Horatio is that one among us, and his movement is always, he does not move to go into battle for anybody, and yet to rise the knowing and the remembering and the truth of each being inside of them. And when you remember that, there is nothing no battle that ever needs to be fought, because there is nothing that you aren't moving with your own clarity of your own being and your interconnectedness. Yes?
Yes. Part of the question, if we could elaborate in the place where one feels like they should be responsible and take care of another who cannot take care of themselves.
Yes.
Where is really going on there?
Well, we have spoken about, and what is really going on there is confusion, because it is never about taking care of each other. And that is one that we know we send ripples of shock through some people when we offer that, because much the different is taught, yes? And yet it is, you are truly the only being you are to take care of, ever, is yourself. And never forget this part, yes?
Okay.
You are to care for, to truly care for, from the origin of caring, the oracle of the origin of caring, in your own being and in the connectedness of all. You are to care for every other, yourself and every other particle of existence, yes? So you might look and say, well, my small child is not able to take care of herself. And yet, consider it this way. If you move to take care of your child, then you are coming from an energy that could grow burden. Yes, I have to do this and I have to do that to take care of her, to assure her well-being or his well-being. Yes, and instead, when it comes from that glistening of your soul and your heart and the love that is of loving, and you are saying, oh, I'm caring for this being that is my child, or this being that is my friend, or this being that is my friend's child, or whatever it is, yes? And one I may or may not even know, when I move in my caring for, there's no burden. There's all affection. And you may do some of the same things, yes? The energy that comes from, though, depletes nothing and adds everything, yes? And so, because the truth is, if anybody was to say to you, Julien, I can take care of you, it would feel a little bit offensive and intrusive, yes? Because it would be instead, I believe absolutely in your ability to take care of yourself, and I'm going to care for you so wholly in the midst of that, in support and in togetherness with you in that. Now you feel what is the truth of connectedness, and you feel yourself. Because when one human moves to take care of another human, there's actually goes missing some belief, and the human can feel that fracture, and that maybe I have to be taken care of, maybe I'm not enough, and that's when some of that other self-informing that is not accurate begins to move, and then a spiral can happen. Yes.
Absolutely.
So let us stand up, remind each other who we actually are, and hold that with each other, and actually almost insist. It is not through bully insist, and instead through, I'm going to hold the space for you. I will hold all the belief that I know is in you, in my being, for you, until you remember that you have it. Yes? And that's
absolutely beautiful. Yeah.
That is really all of the time. And that can be, if you are watching something on television and you see that somebody is suffering, you can send that. It is as powerful as if it is this wonderful being sitting next to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes? And when that is truth in you, and you inspire that, how your world is truly changing. Yes?
Indeed.
Otherwise, if you're battling, then you stay in the suffering, and it doesn't really change a great deal, because it's just through the same course that it came through before. Yes?
Indeed.
Very good intent in battling for each other. Just doesn't really work. Yes?
Call it battling of insisting. That
Yes.
we see the love inherent
Yes.
in one another.
Through love that is of loving and not fearful loving, which are two different things. Yes.
All warriors can become love warriors and follow bringing that forward, I feel.
Indeed.
I do have another question from another Pleiadian who is curious about a human reaction that humans have, and this is the observation that humans have sort of like an indifference all the way to the point of disgust with the idea of using substances for mind-altering experiences. Some of the reasons for this, they believe, is because there becomes dependency and therefore does not live from an authentic state of being able to produce the same effects themselves. And yet others, they feel that they do not understand why someone else could enjoy or experience a substance. And so there's this substance confusion in exactly what should be legal, what should be illegal, what is right, what is wrong, what is good, and what is bad.
Control.
In many ways.
Yes.
So the confusion from this point, Pleiadian, is this necessary in a future timeline? Is this going to, create necessary separations for people? Some people do enjoy substances and they keep themselves away from people who do not enjoy substances.
Well, that is still unfolding, yes. And what we offer, though, as it moves into union, the battle of right and wrong, good or bad, that duality, that I'm right so you're not, yes, falls away, yes. And so it is, and that is where we're talking about the differences when the curiosity is open. If somebody, when you are seeing the one that moves to the point of disgust or those words that you utilize with somebody who's choosing to use a substance, yes, you understand? Yes. We really would say there's fear there. There's no curiosity. Because if they're willing to open their curiosity, then they can actually learn. They can still choose how they feel about it and what is the truth for them. Mm-hmm. And yet they do not need to put each other in imprisonments over it. Yes, do you understand?
Yes.
And so we would say the cure for that is curiosity. Yes, and that's really we encourage humans so much to open your curiosity, because there can be nothing would exist without curiosity. Yes, and no conversation can take place without curiosity. And so when you have somebody who has a predetermined decision about what they think about something, there's no conversation that can take place about it. Yes.
Indeed.
And if they open up even the slightest curiosity will eliminate the threat, and then they can actually learn, and then they can make their choice about that without the threat, and therefore do not need to live separate from each other or annihilate each other. Yes. And instead can say, wow, that is a match for you. It is not a match for me. And release the judgment and control. The fearfulness, that is, they believe they are doing very well, and that is part of what we refer to from fearful loving. I need to make sure you are doing this or not doing that, because you doing it threatens me. And when you become curious, the threat goes away.
Indeed.
Yes?
Indeed. I would fully agree. I really love that answer.
Wonderful.
One smaller question, it may not be small, depending on how the response comes through. One small question, do you sense that the world in which the fairy-like folk will return and be able to engage with humans on a more literal way. This is not from the Pleiadians, but this is for myself. Because I've been getting a lot of indicators of this and a lot of sensations that this is already occurring, and that it will, can become a whole planet-wide, experience.
Yes, we would say absolutely, and many life forms other than fairies.
Correct.
Yes. What we are going to offer, though, Julien, is that humans will move through, in part of this metamorphosis, of releasing those who choose to. Some will not choose to do that, and that will all move in its own way. And yet, how do we bring this? So it is that many times humans have put their idea of what things look like according to what they already know. Yes?
Yeah.
And so what we are bringing is when the curiosity comes in and you allow your being to actually experience something as it is, instead of what you have decided it looks like, you're going to see a lot more.
Instead of a preconceived
notion. Yes. And so it is because there are already things that are seeable, but if your mind doesn't agree to see them, then you're not seeing them. And your mind doesn't only have to agree to see them. It is to say, I choose to exchange and to see and to move with this opening for what it truthfully is. Because while there is a form of a fairy that looks like some of the fairies that have been offered as imagery in your world, there are many forms of fairies. Yes, and they don't all look like miniature humans. Yes,
no.
And nor do mermaids. And so it is really that as your curiosity opens, so does the vibration and energy of the world. And one of the things we've been bringing through is to open up the energy of your glistening, because that is what evaporates the separations. And we know it is a very simple concept, and yet it's really extraordinary when you come into connectivity with your own glistening and you allow it to interact with your senses, which are your communication tools. It is already all occurring. The ability to interact differing sorts of life expressions with one another. And again, letting the idea of what that even means be open. Yes?
It's as if curiosity. It's as if curiosity is a variation of allowing or opening.
It is opening completely. With it, truly, we would say to you, and you've had experiences, if you have an attempt to have a conversation with somebody who is not willing to be at all curious about what you're talking about, there's no conversation. Yes? So it is. There has to be at least some opening of curiosity for anything to move and have exchange.
It's like opening with the quotient of excitement on your part to see exciting experience unfold in that space. And if someone shares that vibration with you, then great potential exists.
Absolutely. And then it keeps getting bigger and bigger, because now there are two different energies which are completely differing, coming with their own sets of ideas, birthing more. Yes?
Often some of the most beautiful things come from that experience between people.
Yes.
I want to thank you for joining us today.
Indeed.
It was more than a pleasure. I don't know what expression to use, but it's been really beautiful to be able to meet with you two, all three of you, I suppose, and
it's a crowd.
Definitely, I'm very interested in open to having perhaps further communications in the future. Maybe some interesting subjects people would like to hear, some resolution on or some insight on, and we might find ways of sharing that. But Don, again, I want to thank you, of course, for just bringing this all together. Thank you so much for, helping make this space a really, beautiful space. Whether you're aware, it's a very healing space, I think, in this way that you've initiated the contact with all of us here.
Definitely.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you.
And we know we love you with sugar on top, DonMurphy.
Exactly. You know the same, Mary. I know we've gone over on time, but I'm wondering, Mary, if you could, before we bring Jackie back, if you could maybe leave us with a short blessing in the original language for our listeners.
Indeed. Indeed. Hasontare te kereata indorishite kirin pat atere shata ete atekaro andere shinde te hiti umboka da ashe teon. Anka hare esho te ete indiatom pike ta ashetidi ni kiriamo. Akaha atahoshe. Ndiki. Ha. Be well. Yes.
Wow. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, Jackie. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So,
thank you. Thank you, guys.
So that was amazing. I appreciate it. So your website, Donna Jackie, for if anybody wants to contact you with questions about Mary or possible sessions, is
themarygroup.com.
Marygroup.com. And where can people find information about your spoons and clothing?
Oh yeah.
You can find my wood carving at risingrootstudio.com.
Okay.
And also, I believe that there's a Rising Root Studio Facebook page, but most of what I do is on the .com.
Gotta check that.
And I've just got a Facebook page for my design, so Edgeless Designs on Facebook. And I would like to mention, I don't think I even have it on the website. I'm not a techie person. But we do have a teleconference starting next week. It's a 6-week teleconference. It's 1 hour on Tuesday evenings. And it is about, I don't even know the exact title of it, but it's living beyond the continuous fracture of surviving, and embracing the true thriving that we are. And it's really, really super powerful work when Mary talks about how we operate so much in the energy of surviving and letting go of that and really, really rising in what we actually are. And it's Mary, when they move with people, it's phenomenal. So just bringing deep information that's like bringing the truth out in your own soul, and you being able to recognize what you know in the depth of you and just didn't know how to reach.
And if people are not familiar, they just got evidence of it a moment ago.
Yes.
So does that start next Tuesday? What's the date of next Tuesday? Is that right? Or
Tuesday would be the 17th.
Yeah.
Now, if people catch onto this late, we'll say they come across this recording, is there some sort of archive system that they can, is there going to be a system where people can catch onto it not live, I want to say?
Yes, we do. Actually, with all of our lives, we offer replays. So if you sign up for 6 weeks, if you can't tune in on Tuesdays, you can listen to it any other time. And we leave those up for 30 days after it's over.
I see.
So people can join later and still be in for some of the live calls and some in the replay. And we've done a lot of different workshops, and we are working on putting together some replays and recordings and things of those. And you can get on our website. We've got a couple things up, but we're working on building our store and putting more out there. We actually, Mary does a lot of things. So, and if you want just kind of a glimpse of some of their teachings, we do have a book that people have really talked about, have just brought so much truth forward for them and changed their lives. So if you're interested in that, you can get that there. Living Without Edges.
Living Without Edges. and you also have
on Amazon, I believe, too. Yeah. And also a morning messages.
Yes, that's what I was going to mention.
So we do Monday through Friday. Jackie sits down with Mary, and Mary
puts out a message.
Inspiring, thoughtful, sometimes humorous, a message.
Usually it's specifically meant for me. It goes out to everybody around the world.
I try to expand for everybody, but
Yeah.
It's a generous kind of guy you are, Don.
So, and you can sign up for those on themarygroup.com as well.
And that's free.
If you would like to. Yeah, and those are free of charge, and they're available for anybody. So our first book was a collection of, I think, 365. It was a year's worth of those morning messages.
Beautiful.
So,
and if you do get on the website and you sign up for our mailing list, then you find out about all the things we're doing. And we also do periodic, usually about once every 2 or 3 months, we'll do a free call so that people can call in, ask questions, and move with the marriage with anything they're interested in. So
beautiful, perfect.
Yep.
Wonderful,
Lots of
wonderful
different ways
offer.
to experience them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us, both of you.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And
Things are great.
as a last note, anybody who wants to keep track of these interviews going forward, or any information from this YouTube channel that you find this on, you can go to julianwells.com. And thanks again, everybody. And until next time.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.